So there is a little tent outside a little city in Laos where people bring their unexploded ordnances, and this what you have in your hands there are what are made of those. And on the way to that little tent outside that little city, we rode our motorcycles past fields that were being demined, and they had bomb, devices, and sometimes they used rats. We didn't see any of those. And there were not UNESCO, but United Nations vehicles there. Mainly it's United Nations that is still involved in that. Last number I heard was that the United States is one of the lowest countries that are paying for the extraction of those. I think we give about $5 million a year. And as Gina said, there are 78 million. Laos is the most bombed country in history. And it was a country that we never knew had any bombs in it because that was a part of our secret war at that point, right? It was only till later that whole piece came out. And of course, these were bomblets, about the size of maybe a cue ball or something like that. And there were places where we wanted to go motorcycling, but we were unable to because it had the cross and the skull bone, which meant that area hadn't been cleared yet. And so there is still work to be done, brothers and sisters. All right. All right. Well, did anyone enjoy the drama and the chaos and the tension associated with our presidential election? I'm not seeing any hands. For once, I guessed right. How many of you are glad it's over? There we go. How many hated the whole thing? All right. How many had some difficult conversations as a result of that process? All right. How many of us avoided difficult conversations because of that process? Yeah, okay. Now, there are those that think that churches should stay out of politics. But here's why I think that is impossible. Jesus said, "Truly, I tell you, whatever you did to the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it to me." Now, so who are the least of these? Well, that's generally interpreted as a call to care for the poor, the marginalized, and those in need. And that in serving them, that's considered equivalent to serving Jesus. So what would that in today's vernacular be? Well, here's a few that I can think of. The immigrant, right? The poor, the defenseless, those who need help. For many years, it's been the LGBTQIA community, and as of late, it has been certainly the T in that, the trans community. Women who are not able to receive the medical procedures that they desire, that they need. The marginalized. These are the least among us, right? To help them requires that we be engaged in politics, because that is where the levers of power come into people's lives. And if not earlier expressed, that is where justice needs to be expressed. So this week we had an election, the outcome of which would and did determine who would in the very near future be controlling the levers of power. States have rights. You may have heard that phrase, states' rights, that are separate from the federal government. But as we all know, there's a reason why Washington is called the seat of power, right? Because you have the House there, the Senate, and the big seat, that being the presidency. Now, in any election, by its very nature, there are winners and losers. This election, as have the past several, were very hotly contested. But I think what was unique about this election, and those backing both candidates, believed that democracy was on the line. Both sides, if you will, believed number one issue was democracy. And for some, it wasn't just the immediate future of this democracy, but would this 200 and almost 50-year experiment we call America be on the line? So I want to spend some of my time hearing from you this morning. And I feel comfortable doing this because I really know that this is a caring and careful people. So I'm going to give you an opportunity. Got a microphone around here somewhere. There it is right there. I'm going to ask, how are you doing? Okay. Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you angry? Are you feeling hopeful? And I know, and so do you, that for the most part, this community is sad. That this community is upset at the results. And that's an invitation to express that and to hear, how are you coping with it? And if you are good with what took place, I strongly believe this is a safe place where you can say that, all right? And all the better if you feel comfortable about saying why you're happy, why you're good, why you're elated with the results. Sisters and brothers, we need to be able to do that. We need to be able to hear and talk with one another and listen to one another. So, here's your chance. And this is the mic you've got to speak right into. Okay, so we are a community of faith. We are this is called a family-sized church, okay? And our strength will be in our ability to act and be like family. And oddly enough, some of our family discussions were some of the most difficult discussions. I certainly know that to be true. So, who would like to share the struggles they had? Or the joy? Yes, thank you, Denise. Speak right into it.
Okay. I guess I have the old phrase, it is what it is, you know? And I'm hopeful that he does a better job than he did his first term.
Okay. And then this is like there's no right or wrongs here, okay? So thank you.
Yeah, I'm just extremely disappointed.
Okay. All right, thank you. Yep. I'll be right back. Mr. Rob, thank you.
I am utterly astounded, and I feel betrayed by our nation that has clearly seen what a good person Kamala Harris was and what she represented versus what Trump had espoused every single MAGA crowd rally that he has had, where he showed vitriol, hate, and despise for his common man. I don't know where this country is going, but I feel deeply betrayed by common sense. I have 3 daughters, a wife, who have now less rights today and into the future, and it is absolutely sickening.
Okay. All right. Yep, that's a strong opinion, but others felt differently. Okay, that's what we're gonna. Well, yeah. Let's wait. Let's not do the applause thing, you guys. No, that's okay. No, let's not do the applause thing because we want everyone to feel comfortable with where they're at. And if you want to feel like applauding, just ask for the microphone and then say, yeah, I agree with him. Okay, let's do it that way. Bonnie, did you? Yeah. And I really appreciate everybody talking here.
Well, I felt so sad and tired this week. I have 2 little granddaughters, 4 and almost 2, and I'm scared about their future. But I was so disappointed that I've been tired, and last night I fell asleep at 6 o'clock. It's just been exhausting.
Exhausted. Yeah, mentally, emotionally exhausted. Okay, all right. Who else? Yep. All right, Kathy.
I'm just scared for what the future is for the country. So we need to pray for it.
Okay, scared. Yep, that's good. No, thank you. That's kind of what I'm looking for. Whatever, and if, hey, the reason I don't want applause is I'm hoping there's somebody who says, well, I'm okay with this, let's give the guy a chance, which Denise, you kind of alluded to a little bit. Someone else. Linda.
I'm anxious about the rest of his presidency and the division that he's caused in the country, to see if it's going to settle down after his in office, because there's so much division. Even in my family, we have Trump voters and Harris voters, and we just don't mention politics anymore because it's not safe.
Right. Yeah. And that's why I'm kind of hoping that this can be a safe place. Anybody want to say, yes, I'm okay with that. I'm good with that. All right. Yeah, good. Thank you. Yep. No, this is why we're here. We are a family. So thank you. Thank you. Yeah, speak right into it.
I'm a Republican. I'm okay with Trump winning. I think that the media has been against Trump and hasn't shown or said he's not taken the power away from the states. Women will still have rights in the states. I think that the economy was bad. He's not going to send everyone back to Mexico, only the bad guys. I don't know what else to say, but I am a stout Republican, and I don't think Trump is going to take our rights away.
Okay. So you think that some of what he said was bravado, in other words, and that's been said. So thank you for sharing that, Todd.
I'm glad that it's over. You want to talk about democracy? Trump took a bullet to the head.
Okay.
What does that say?
Okay. Thank you, Dixie. Got to speak right into it, though, hon. Like right into it.
I'm glad it's over.
You're glad it's over, okay?
But I agree with Lori 100%.
Okay.
And I think women will be fine.
All right. Well, I really appreciate your guys speaking up, because I know you feel like you're, in a different place here. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. All right, Rob.
So in the last few days, I've heard your body, my choice, coming from the MAGA people. I've heard and seen people say, black people, report to your nearest plantation for cotton picking. So we have an element within society that's taking advantage of this and moving very far to an uncomfortable position. Mm-hmm. Where do we as a nation draw the line at this kind of behavior and start respecting each other?
Yeah. Whoops. Okay.
To add on to that, my roommate was sent
speak right into it, hon.
To add on to that, my roommate was sent a text message like that, and it was anonymous, and it was just very scary, and we talked about it for a while.
So your roommate received one? Yeah. Okay.
The plantation and
reporting. Because I think some probably think that's just like hyperbole, that's really not happening, so.
As much as MAGA likes to say fake news, it's not fake news when you see it firsthand.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Well, I appreciate the emotion. Anyone else? Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. All right. Beth, yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, and I agree. On Wednesday, I would say that my family had a phone meeting, and we'd already made plans to leave the country if this was the outcome, and we were just making our final decision as to what country that was going to be. And we then went about our day, which I have to say the whole day I actually felt like I was in mourning, and not just for what's happening to this country, but for the people of Ukraine and the LGBTQ community and the immigrants and the Palestinians, because we know what's going to happen with that. Beyond Ukraine, it'll be Poland, and we will no longer be supporting our allies. And with those thoughts, to all of us came how lucky we are to be here and not in those positions so badly. The next day we met again and considered still the horrific injustice of this vile, and it's just not him, it's his cadre of hate. Everything that we have been raised to respect and treat others as they are an absolute model of what not to do. Biden wasn't responsible for the inflation or the economy. If he was he responsible for it in all the European countries that went through even higher inflation than what the United States did, all post-COVID because of the supply chain issue? No, he wasn't, and he wasn't responsible for it here. But in that meeting, then on Thursday, we did count our blessings and realize how happy that we are here. I'm happy, lucky to be here. And that I personally and other family members have shut off the news and decided that we will indulge or commit ourselves to organizations, helping people, reaching out and helping those like we should be anyway, and go on and try to help the people who need it more than we do.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think a lot of people did some hard soul searching this week and considered the same question you did. One of the things trending this week was, how do I move to another country? I mean, that's kind of their visceral response. So, well, yeah. Well, I really appreciate that. And there's nothing easy about this. And I think right here we can experience how do we care for those who are in a different place, as in care, as in like I can somehow find the ability to care for you. I think Gina wanted to say something, but I asked her to do something. You know, if I too wonder, like what holy texts have buoyed you, and I have some I'm going to share during our prayer time. See, one of the things that really complicates this, and I really appreciate everyone's honesty, especially those that felt uncomfortable or felt maybe alone in where they were. What really complicates this as a faith matter is that we have one book and two completely different understandings of it. That's what makes it so dang difficult. All right, and so I just wanted to show a couple of statistics here. So white evangelicals are 22% of the voters, and they voted for Trump 81 to 17%. Now that's almost unfathomable to think about. All right, and not in a negative way. I'm just thinking that any demographic group to be that monolithic is like, wow. And then in Wisconsin, 22% of the voters there are white evangelicals. That's identical to the national average. And they voted for Mr. Trump, 77 to 23%. And so if you were to remove the white evangelicals, in other words, from Wisconsin, Harris would have won by a 14-point margin. She would have won 56-42. All right. But Harris lost Wisconsin because of Trump's landslide with white evangelicals. Okay, so one more. In Georgia and North Carolina, the split was even more extreme. 92% voted for Trump among the Georgia white evangelicals. The political divide now, the major political divide is now education. Formally, by that I mean, high school, college, post-college, that type of formal education, they're more likely to vote against Trump unless they are white evangelicals. Okay. So I share this because both sides, and I don't know any other way to phrase that, I don't like that language, but both sides have as their touchstone this book, right? Right. This book, they would say, is their guiding star, their North Star, their gyroscope. Gyroscopes maintain orientation. I've never been to the hospital of anyone, no matter where they were in the faith continuum, or at their house as they were going through a struggle, and said, hey, Pastor Kurt, could we please read the First Amendment together? Or maybe that Second Amendment that means so much to me. You know, I've never had anybody make that request. So our faith is to be front and center. So one of my questions is, how is it that people who both claim as their central teaching, their touchstone, the same book, can arrive at such diametrical views? Okay. We're called, we're challenged to put our faith, our convictions ahead of our politics. I think we could agree on that. Faith before politics. And yet the bifurcation takes place in such a way that I know there are those who say, listen, the reason I'm a Republican is because I'm a Christian. I know that, right? And there are those that say the reason I'm a Democrat is because I'm a Christian, is because my faith is my primary filter. It's the reason I decided to leave some other party and land here. My faith, my politics are synonymous. There's no space between them. So when it comes to putting your faith before your politics, as I've said it many times, you can prove anything you want in the Bible, friends. A couple of weeks ago, I talked about what was the driving force, what was the political underpinnings, the theological backbone, if you will, of the slavery movement. The men, and I'll say men, the men standing at these pulpits, you know, who could find 200 verses to prop up slavery. Okay, so you can prove anything. So no matter where you stand politically, you can find something in the Bible that supports your stand. And the interesting thing is when it comes to the political season, we all want to be on Team Jesus, right? But when we read the Gospels, Jesus did not come to any one side except one. So, as Jesus is really, this is Jesus' final sermon. And, you know, as you're leaving the house or you're getting off the phone, you keep the most important. You say, I love you. It's the last thing you say, right? You keep the best till last. Jesus was saying, this is how we're going to know who was a faithful follower. It's the separation of the sheep and the goats. The sheep are the good people, the goats are the not. You know, you don't want to be a goat, right? He says, well, how do you know the sheep and the goats? How do we separate the sheep from the goats? So Jesus says, for I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was naked and you gave me clothing. I was sick and you took care of me. I was in prison and you visited me. And then the righteous will say to him, Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and we gave you food, or thirsty and we gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you as a stranger and we welcomed you, or naked and we gave you some clothing? And when was it that you were sick or in prison and we visited you? And the king will answer them, he's telling a parable. Truly, I tell you, just as you did it to the least of any one of the members of my family, to the least of any one of these, my family, you did it to me. And so I'd like to suggest that the way we keep our faith in front of our politics, the way we keep our faith first, is by putting people first and politics second. Because Jesus was for what was best for people. So I think it's one of the first lessons we learned when we started attending church, right? Jesus always put what was best for people first. I think that's home plate for Jesus, people. That's the goalpost, right? Jesus always wanted and still always wants what's best for all people. So that's where, as a people of faith, we can begin our conversation. See, we can disagree on what's best for people, but we cannot and we dare not disagree that what's best for people is what's best. So name a bill, some legislation, debating, debate away. But for Jesus followers, we cannot debate whether or not what's best for people is what's best. And so when the conversation or when the debate says, well, this is best for the people, or this is best for the people, how are we to decide, right? Because that's, again, we're at loggerheads. How are we to decide what's best for the people? I revert back to this guy named Jesus, who said, truly, I say to you, as you did it to the least of these my children, you did it to me. We are to do what's most important to God, right? I think that's my understanding anyway. We're to do what's most important to God, and conveniently, Jesus was asked what's most important to God. And they came to Jesus and they said, Jesus, you're this awesome teacher. You claim to be, and by all rights, looks like you are indeed close to God. Can you tell us what's most important? Now, as in Jesus' day, there's lots that was important. So, what's most important? Do you remember how Jesus replied? Well, here's what Jesus said. He said, you shall love the Lord your God. Remember, he said, what? Jesus, what's numero uno? He said it in Hebrew. What's number one? And Jesus said, well, you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. This is the first and the greatest commandment. That's the Shema. We've talked a little bit about that. But before they could breathe, Jesus kept going. Because, you see, this is great. There's a lot of wiggle room in the first one, right? Because that's all internal. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. We don't even know where some of that stuff is. But he says, but the second is like it. He says, I'm not finished. The first isn't enough. I'm not finished. He says, hold on to that question. The most important thing is love God, and the second is just as important. The second is equivalent. The second's the same level. The second is right up there. You shall love your neighbor as you love yourself. So how do we demonstrate our love for God, right? How do we love our fidelity, our North Star, if you will? Is it by church attendance? No, no. There's lots of wiggle room in that one, right? Some title that we wish to give myself, whatever title you would want to name yourself as I'm a Christian, blah, 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 blah. No, you demonstrate your love for God, your heart, soul, strength, and mind by the way you treat other people. Because what's most important is people. This was Jesus' way of saying, if you forget everything else, if you don't remember anything else, I say the most important thing in the world is love God and demonstrate your love for God, not by the way you treat God. Who knows what that means, right? Too many loopholes, too much wiggle room. Demonstrate the way that you love God by how you treat the people God created. The way you treat the people made in the image of God is a reflection, Jesus said, of your true love for God. So what's most important is people. If you want to keep your faith out in front of your politics, put people ahead of politics. So I like to imagine what a different country we would live in if those claiming to be Christ followers did that. And remember, we just talked about this. Who is our neighbor? Those who we most naturally don't get along with. See, that's the rub, right? That's the person we are committing to love as I love myself. Everything hinges on love for God on the inside and how I treat my neighbor on the outside. And it would be a game changer. And that's why it's so simple. And at the same time, that's why it's so hard. That's why it's so difficult. To think in terms of placing my faith value ahead of my political values. So I invite you to think about it this way. Your behavior makes perfect sense to you, right? Can we nod some heads on that one? Your behavior makes perfect sense to you. If somebody said, why'd you do that? You wouldn't go, I don't know why I did that. Well, you might, but most of the time you say, well, I know why I did that. Because your behavior makes perfect sense to you. And every single person you will ever meet, their behavior makes perfect sense to them. Likewise, your political views make perfect sense to you. And if I were to say to you, why did you vote for him? Why did you vote for her? Most people could give you an answer. Your political views make perfect sense to you. So here's where I'm going post-election. When you don't know how someone could do such a thing, believe such a thing, when you don't know how somebody could support such a person, when you don't know how somebody could support such a view or such a bill, and you don't know how in the world they could believe such a thing or support such a thing or believe such a thing, it's because there's something you don't know. There's something you don't know. So one of the best things we can do going forward is not move, is not to give up. Here's what I want us to think about or encourage, is be a student, not a critic. Because if you're a student and not a critic, you'll learn something. I will be a student first, and I will be a critic second. See, if you're a Jesus follower, we should be people filled with confidence, right? And with that confidence, we can be the most curious people on the planet. Lifelong learners, I think our educators ask us to be, right? Well, we can be lifelong learners in the faith. We can be intensely curious about how someone arrived at a different place than we did. And we can be the most compassionate person in the room. And that doesn't mean you don't get to have an opinion, and that doesn't mean you can't embrace it passionately. But in terms of our demeanor in a conversation, we have an opportunity, we have a choice. So here's a question, a simple question you can toss out in your conversation. What led you to that view? What led you to believe that? Or what led you to hold that position? See, when we get into a conversation with someone, we're grabbing the caboose, right? We're getting at the end. We're at the outcome. When we ask what led you to where you are now, you've just invited someone to tell you their journey. And I found that when we know someone and we know someone's story, it's hard not to like them. As a follow-up, you can add, have you always held this view? Have you always seen it this way? Have you always voted that way? Have you always supported that idea? All right? Now we're talking about the person, something that goes before the politics and beyond the politics. And if you really want to go for the touchdown with them, how about this one? And this was one that might go, I could kind of do those two, but here's the third one. To say, I get most of my information from the media. How about you? Oh, you get most of your information from the media too, which means we are both marginally informed, and neither of us is likely to be 100% right or 100% wrong. So we're probably both a little bit wrong, at least. You see, I think that approach can bring down the temperature, and we can find some common ground with people whom we otherwise might not be able to. Because at the end of the day, what matters most is people. So I think this approach allows us to keep our influence as a Jesus follower. You are the light of the world. You are the salt of the earth. We've been called to influence people. And while we can disagree on what's best for people, we dare not disagree that what's best for people is what's best. Oh Lord, I would like to see the image of Jesus. As you prayed over Jerusalem and you used the imagery of a mother hen and her chicks and how your desire was that everyone would come and feel that comfort, feel that safety, feel that togetherness of that brood. We have become so segmented and divided. Lord, just help us to put people first. And that's hard, and there is so much anguish, and my heart has broken this week. And not for myself, but for others. But yet, if we don't know one another's story, if we just come on to the caboose, I don't think we'll get past the rancor. We are red and yellow, black and white, Republican, Democrat, liberal, progressive, Green Party, all are precious in your sight. Help that to sink in to us, Lord, because we're angry. Some of us are sad, some of us are happy, some of us are patient. We're just a whole bunch of things, but may we always put people and one another first. That's my prayer, and I hope our prayer. In the name of the Christ we pray. Amen.